He, uh, even though he had everything he was wanted, I pointed out to him the one thing I was trying to teach him, which was he wasn't chasing his goal. His goal wasn't to win a debate. His goal was to have people agree with him. And his goal really wasn't to have people agree with him either. His goal was to have people respect him and agree with him because they wanted to, because they thought he was wise. And I showed him that by taking what he presented as one thing and slicing it into three parts and feeding him each of those three parts, except for the one that he was hungry for. So I starved him. And I showed him by starvation that even though he had carte blanche, the only thing he wanted was the thing he couldn't ask for.
Yeah.
Which was, I want you to not look at me like I'm a bad person. I don't want you to look at me as weak. I want you to look at me as good. And that's when I felt sorry for him. Because that's how many people.
Yeah.
It's hard to be mad at somebody who's acting out of fear. And this is not a rejection of evil either, because there are some people out there who are just straight evil. They've decided that other people don't matter, and they've seen both sides of it, and they don't care. And they don't care about themselves anymore at all, or they only care about what's in front of them, and they're animals, animals in the sense that they're only responding on instinct rather than using their brain to guide with that. So now you got to hear the healing part of the first one, and I'll give you the healing part for the second one, because I did give this guy some healing too, because he gave me all the parts that I needed to build it, and this was me reaching out. So I said, in all seriousness, because part of the previous exchange was I told him I was a fool, and I am. I'm just more of a fool than people give me credit for, and they only assume the silly parts of being a fool. There's a lot of good stuff that goes along with being a fool too. Number one, you get to say what you're thinking, and you get to say what needs to be said. So I tell him, contrary to what you may think of me, I do not dislike you. So this is some more strategic honesty. All of this is true. I just give him the other side of it that I've been keeping hidden. Your command of logic is impressive, and you've built some impressive things. It's true. I didn't come here to test your logic, and I really wasn't testing you at all. Also true. I was testing myself. Whatever you may think of the professional fool, not the one-sided and childish gesture, but the actual fool, the fool of the tarot, the one who questions, the one who sees the tangles that have been smoothed over. There are many kinds of contest in the world, and logic is only one of them. I came to play the fool. My birthplace was in the pits of logic. I lived with nihilism for some time, and stoicism and objectivism and many isms. I've read many of the same people you must have as a professor: Plato, Descartes, Hegel, Nietzsche, Jung, and many others. I built towering structures of logic that were impenetrable from attack inside and out. I laughed at the impotence of all who could not climb them, and they could not. But some could get close. But few could see what I did, at least the way I did, and that was good enough for a time. So I identified with him, which all of that true, and that's pretty much this guy to a T. His origin story and mine are the same. He's probably smarter than I am, because some of his logic is better than mine. I didn't beat him by logic. I probably couldn't. He's just better, but he's not a better mental fighter than I am. He just had better technique, but no idea how to put any power or strategy behind it. His creativity was failing.
The typical martial arts.
Yes, exactly. So I told him this was me, and this was my decision. Then I realized how pointless it was for me to live in a place where I was the sole dominion if I were living there alone. So I set out to learn different kinds of strategy. I was great, but I kept telling myself everything I wasn't great at didn't matter. When I left my tower, I could see how big it looked up close, because it was. When I stepped away from it, my towers of logic grew small the way a far city becomes small. All I have done is visit you in your tower. That I warranted enough attention to get thrown out is proof that I could climb inside it. The offense is that I climbed it wrong. It's a simple trick. I knew where to climb because your towers of logic use many of the same blueprints and designs as my own construction. And why wouldn't they? They're the best designs with those materials. Those who do not see the cracks are not at fault. The cracks are always there. It's only a matter of how small one is able to find and how small one is able to make themselves to fit through to see what is on the other side. Sort of like Maxwell's demon. One particle here, one particle there. That's a reference to an experiment I won't get into. I don't challenge you to say you are small. I challenged you to say you are big enough to see how much bigger you could be by comparison. And even that isn't an insult. It's just the nature of the cosmos that logarithmic scales make fools of us all. And the fundamental nature of any axiom is rooted in circular reasoning, which he would know. So I'm using parts of his education to speak to him by cherry picking the best ones that make my point. By necessity, it's a greater part of a whole sliced off to explain a part of the whole. Nietzsche, think of the man which you may, understood this deeply and left a strange map for anyone to follow who can have the will to explore the most useful and disgusting hypothetical axiom, the assumption that our assumptions are wrong in fundamental ways we might not understand. That's a very disgusting thing for many people, him included. I said, if my words ring true, do with them as you will. If they do not, I still wish you well, which is still a dismissal of him. It's to say my worth and yours are not twined, but I've given you something that you can decide whether you don't want. So I've given him validation, and I've told him I don't care what he does with it.
Mm-hmm.
So I've given him what he wanted without giving him power over me, which is my carrot to him. That's a subliminal carrot. Either that one will grow if it doesn't take root. In much the same way, I cannot stay in one place to maintain dominion over it. It is the same way others cannot leave, nor would they wish to if they could. Who else would build that part of reality if they did? It would throw all of humanity into chaos if it did, meaning if everybody did what I did, which was just go everywhere, nothing would stay the same. We would all die.
Mm-hmm.
I need people to work the fields. I need people to feed me, and I can have ideas about the next machine that makes work in the fields easier. But there's going to be a lot of crap in the middle too, so everyone can't do that, and it's a good thing that everyone doesn't want to, and that I don't want to do what everyone else does, because, well, then we'd be stuck with, I don't know, we'd still be using sticks to till the ground and praying to the moon for a good harvest. I said it would look like chaos. I only say others look small to you because you are far away from them. Isolation is not a trophy. At best, it creates a dependency on self-soothing behavior to remind itself how it needs to be seen and spoken of as good. And then, I hit him again. I hit him with my apology because that's the nature of healing. And now this time I do what I didn't do before. I smooth it over. I can't fault that. I lived it for 30 years, and it's not a life devoid of joy or happiness, which means there are perks to it. Joy and happiness only appear irrelevant to me now and meaningless compared to their potential for growth. There is no loss on growth except to accept the potential that was not used beforehand. A pain that bites harshly, the closer one gets to the grave. Many of the old become weak of courage to look there. Because if you learn a thing that would have changed your life and it's almost over, whew, and especially if that thing was your fault, that's tough. It's tough when you have a lot of time left. It's really tough when you don't. And this guy said he'd been a professor for 30 years, so I threw that in there because I had to take that into consideration. Don't let your age get you. There's still a lot you can do with a little amount of time, and lost potential doesn't care how much you protect it. I said that which the human heart does not see, it does not yearn for. That was another quote. That's from the Gulag Archipelago, which he may or may not have read. That was scattershot. I can say that philosophy and psychology are deeply rooted in mathematics and logic. That's me giving him the same carrot that I gave the other guy, because they have the same problem. You see why I chose these two people for examples. One person had this problem and was bitter. One person had this problem and was scared. Both of these persons had this problem and were scared. the ways to cut through that fear were completely opposite. So now that I'd smacked him enough to get him to listen, whereas the other guy had to smack him enough to stop being a little bitch, this guy here says, now I say, logic that does not fear to go there will find merging with emotion to be that which allows it to transcend. That was the truth I needed to put forward to him, is that, and I used his own fear against him again. If you weren't such a scaredy cat, you could find out that emotion would allow you to be more than you are. Well, I'm not scared of anything. Okay. So he either has to live with that lie by not doing it, or at least go through the exercise of it, which will plant seeds that I could never plant because he knows where to look. And I leave him with an invitation, something kind. I said, I'll be around if you ever leave your tower. My group welcomes the strange, and if you ever become able to stomach the company of those who accept multidimensional value of the individual, where other metrics besides intellect and logic are the only dividing line, then logic and creativity begin to see how much potential there is to use what is there in ways previously unconsidered. So if you stopped measuring people by the same stick and were a little bit more creative, you could find out what they can do that you cannot. I said, I may come to visit time and again. I'll make sure not to come in the back door again, so long as I can resist my own childish urges to use it whenever I see its existence being ignored. And he gives me, and I'll close this with the response that he gave me, because he gives me a compliment in his language. So this will sound weird. You know, agreeing with twats on the internet makes one look like the biggest twat of all, a submissive twat. I don't dislike you either, because I cannot get up the strength to like or dislike anyone. So what has he done? He just was vulnerable with me.
Yeah.
Even though he wouldn't see that.
Right.
Such is my cold, dead heart. But you do vex me, like my cat when she uses my phone as a pillow and drools on it. Believe it or not, that was a compliment. Probably one of the best ones he could give me. In any case, just remember, question everything, including that which you hold to be true, and you'll be okay. Otherwise, you'll be an intellectual snack for the clear-headed. So I said to him, that I can vex one such as yourself is likely the highest praise one would receive. It's not the compliment that matters, it's the scale of it compared to what is possible that is interesting. And he, for the first time in that entire interaction, gave me a like emoji on that last comment.
Wow.
So anybody who is not either of us would look at that and see a chaotic dick measuring contest. And as far as how useful it would be to them, that's probably all the takeaway someone could get. But my goal wasn't to put on a good show. My goal wasn't to appear this way or that. My goal was to see if I could get this person to connect with their emotions and show some damn vulnerability. And I did everything that he does, which means I made myself like him. I became a pompous fool. I was disagreeable. I was provocative. I was dismissive. I was haughty, egotistical. And I showed him that he meant nothing to me. Which, boy, is that a dickhead that does that. But now he sees me. Or rather, he sees a thing he understands. And that's when I put the little pieces of myself in there that are also true. So one can look at that and say, Tom, that's not really you. And I would say, you're lying to yourself and to me. That is me. That is a part of me that I understand. That is a part of me that I recognize as almost useless, almost worthless, almost always counterproductive. But just because I know that doesn't mean that I run from it, because even though there are many ways to use that wrong, there's a few ways out there where doing what looks like a dick move to somebody will be seen by that somebody as a kindness. And knowing how what you're doing will be received is the key impact of mental martial arts. It means that what hurts you, what affects you, is not what's going to affect the person you're talking to. In fact, the more that one views this as that, the more information they give away about themselves and how they could be hurt. So I guess I'll kind of close with that, is that mental martial arts is the ability to use rules that people don't understand to make them go where you want them to go. And it is straight up law of the jungle. There's no sugarcoating it. If you know more, you will be more. And that's not to say some are less. It's just to say that if you don't see it coming, you can't stop it. And the people who pay attention to that will see more than you do. And that's also to say that there are going to be people who see how this works that aren't going to be kind about it. They're going to know how they can invisibly shape, say, a company or a government, like engineering predictable fears that people will fight over while the tax money is spent and never talked of, except in we should do more, we should do less. There's no specifics on there. That stuff never makes it to the ballot. We're too busy fighting over guns and abortion, or being told that we're racist and saying, no, we're not. That's not an accident. That divisiveness is carefully constructed because it's stable. Sure, sometimes one side or another gets out of line, but then what happens? The news stops fanning the flames and they say, oh, well, everybody, let's get back under control here. And then it starts over, the reset. And then they go right back to building it, keeping it on that slow boil so they can turn it up and turn it down. And that's the negative side of mental martial arts, is when you steer people and you stay invisible and you do it so you get ahead and they don't. So I would say that use what I've shown you ethically. Most people do a form of this already, but I've kind of shown how, here's what you practice. Look for uncertainty. Look for validation. Look for what the person's afraid of. And if they're being an ass, make them more afraid so they stop. If they're afraid themselves, be kind. That'll make it go away. And whatever you do to others, be willing to do to yourself. If you do those things, I think it'd be really hard to use this information in a way that doesn't help people, which was my goal, which was the reason I developed it in the first place. So having said all that, I think that was a good lecture. Do you have any questions before I go?
Just a couple comments. It's, as you know, I was a martial arts instructor. And while you were speaking about it, I see how it still guides me into certain things, and why I'm such a good counselor. Because I know how to do the strength and weaknesses and the leverage, but in a good way.
You have like a quick example, because I'm curious. You can leave the names out of it, just like a generality would be fine.
I have, in fact, this is recent. I knew her as a child when I lived in California, and her mother would drop her off at my house just to get the mentoring of another Christian woman. And she's a young adult now with 2 children and divorced, and he was a wife beater, and I lived with that with my first husband. But knowing her strengths and her weaknesses, and my strengths and my weaknesses, I've been able to communicate to her strength and focus and leverage. I mean, she has no contact with them anymore, but she's trying to rebuild her life.
Yeah.
And I know how to direct my energy so that it is effective in helping her, and what not to do, how not to get in her way in a fumbling way, but in a strategic way, to get her to the end of the fight. And
You stand behind her so she can't turn around.
yeah. And you know, I was just seeing so much as you were speaking, and you know, just have dealt with people in the past as a counselor, and like there was sometimes like, how did I know that, and why did that work so well? And I learned so much in martial arts, and you know, and I started late in life. I was 36 when I started, and I would have called myself, and did call myself before that time, a delicate flower. You know, always looked, you know, perfect. You know, it just always did the girly things. And lo and behold, I tried martial arts and I liked it. I got the crap kicked out of me. And my sister took martial arts first, and I didn't know until I went to visit her and participate in their class. They didn't hit each other. They marked. Well, in my karate school, we fought, we hit.
Yeah.
I mean, we did real martial arts. They did katas together, essentially.
Yeah.
And it changed my life. It because there's so many applications, as you well know, of martial arts. It's not just the fight. It's the mental strength, the different perspective on life in general. But it has guided me a lot. You know, and I've got the balance. I'm a Christian and I'm a martial artist, and they do go together.
Oh, sure. Jesus
absolutely. And just as a side note, when I signed up at that school, I had no idea I was going to actually get hit because I saw my sister's school.
Yeah.
You know, they marked. And the first time I got hit, I was like, ow. And he goes, you can't do that. We don't say ow. And he said, I've got to toughen you up. And he did. You know, I was the very first woman in the school's history to get a black belt.
Oh, cool.
No woman had ever even tried. No woman ever wanted to go that far because it was brutal.
Yeah.
I fought on my black belt test. I fought 10 rounds, 3 minutes each with a 1 minute rest, full contact.
Wow.
Oh yeah. And it was the most rewarding thing I've ever done.
Did you make it the full distance?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Because he trained me to do it.
That's a lot of stamina to do that.
And it took a while, you know, because when he said, okay, we're going to start your hard training now for black belt, and I had to go in 5 days a week. I'm good. I have to take the dog to the vet in an hour and a half. But he said, we're going to start your training now. And so I went in every day, an hour early before the school opened, and he beat the crap out of me for about 6 or 7 months until I was ready, until I fought back as well as he wanted me to.
Did you have to learn the lesson, don't close your eyes?
Oh, I learned that one early.
Was that something you learned there, or something you learned before you got there?
Well, I'd never been hit before. Well, that's not true. My first husband used to beat me. Yeah. I probably closed my eyes. But no, he was a good teacher. Oh man, he was a good teacher. And he saw, he saw in me what I didn't know I had.
That's a good teacher.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, he put in the extra, he had to come in an hour early too. Mm-hmm. And you know, you get your gear on, you know, and man, and I got knocked out a couple times, you know, but I got up and finished the fight. And I'm so glad I did it. And it has, you know, like I said, it's made me a better counselor, and it's made me a better person.
Yeah.
And
someday I'd like to be a counselor, or some kind of, maybe not a counselor, or something where I talk to people and make them better versions of himself, because that's what
Like
they're
you're
trying
doing
to do.
now.
Yeah, like if I could get paid to do what I'm doing now, that'd be great. Um, I think the best use of it would be if I could get, hired by, the best for me anyways, would be, get hired into some company where they want their managers to be more
Mhm,
effective.
mhm. Yeah, and a lot of companies are doing that now. But well, all my counseling has been through the church.
Hmm,
I counsel just women, and it's been really interesting. I mean, I've heard stories I never even dreamed of. That things that have happened to people. But I don't know. It's the martial art, and I see no conflict at all between martial arts and Christianity whatsoever. I mean, really, it's it's a position of strength. Both are a position of strength.
well, sure.
But yeah, that was really good. I really enjoyed this.
Okay, well, good. I'm glad you got something out of it. Anthony seemed like he was having a good time too. He seemed
Yeah, yeah. I think he was sorry to have to go. I think he had to pick up a child or something.
So, okay, well, thanks for joining again.
Right.
I'll see you next time.
Okay.
I'll figure out what the next topic is going to be. I have a list somewhere.
Okay.
All right, talk to you later.
Okay. Bye bye.